Hi, I'm Danny Osborne and welcome to my studio in West Cork. This is where I made the Oscar Wilde memorial statue, which is located in Merrion Square, right opposite his family home. And he used to play in that spot as a child and spend a lot of time peering through the railings to see who was going in and out of his parents' house to visit. William Wilde was an eminent archaeologist and eye doctor, and Speranza was a poet, and his mother, and so they had a wide circle of friends going in and out. It all started off with me making this small model or maquette of Oscar, and this is the first one I did, and then it was modified in various ways until it finished up as the full-size model here. Although most people are familiar with images of Oscar Wilde's head when he was younger, when he had longer hair and had a very romantic look about him, I decided to depict him about the age of 40. This was a very pivotal time for him. He'd just had a series of successful plays which were put on in various parts of the world. He'd just published Picture of Dorian Gray, his first novel. It was also at the time of his first homosexual encounter with Robbie Ross, his friend. And so there was a lot going on in his life at that time. So I thought this was a good age to represent him. The expressions I have in his face is kind of a more sad and somber and thoughtful expression on the right-hand side of his face, and then a more happy, optimistic expression on the left-hand side of his face. And this is really to represent his the divided nature which he had. And it's sort of a bit like the comedy tragedy masks which sprung from Greek theatre. I didn't want to put Oscar in a formal pose where, like a sort of classical statue, somebody standing there on a pedestal. So I gave him a sort of devil-may-care lounging back on this rock in the corner of the park in a slightly provocative way, and and holding this flower which he used to flaunt at people sometimes, and projecting his dandyism. This is the reason why he's there in that pose with his legs open, and it's to get away from that formality. He was a very controversial character in his day, and he deliberately tried to provoke people a lot of the time. So Oscar was a very flamboyant and colourful character, and he also loved beautiful things and beautiful objects and things made out of lovely stones. So that was part of the reason why I chose colourful stones to make the statue out of. In fact, he was famous for wearing this smoking jacket when he was giving audience to people. I chose to use nephrite jade as the main stone for his jacket that he was so famous for wearing. This is actually the largest jade carving outside of Asia, and also one of the biggest in the world. It's a stone which is often associated with immortality, and many of the Chinese emperors were dressed in it in their tombs. And also it was buried with a lot of royalty in Central America in the Mayan times. The collar is made of pink thulite, and this is a rare stone from central Norway, which is a semi-precious stone used for jewellery. That took a lot of sourcing, but it holds its polish and will last for hundreds of years without fading or losing its colour. The other stones in the figure are the Guatemalan jade, which is used for the head and the hands. I had to go to all these places to actually source the materials and find exactly the right piece and bring it back here and carve. The shoes came from India, and it's a black granite, and the trousers are made of larvacite, which is very crystalline stone from Norway again. The process started off with the base, which is a 35-ton boulder of white quartz. And I found that up in the Wicklow Mountains in quite a steep slope. So I had to go and get an excavator to dig that out and transport it to Dublin. Before I did that, I actually took a mould off the top of the stone and brought the mould back here to the studio and cast it in concrete and had it right here and built this model in clay first and then cast each respective section into plaster of Paris and then copied each piece of plaster of Paris onto the different coloured stones. To do this, I had to revive several completely obsolete 19th century techniques of making and measuring the pieces of stone in a very accurate way and also fixing them together so that they would allow for expansion and contraction without cracking when they're at different temperatures, like if you get like a hot day and then it freezes at night or something like that. Most of it is, as well, they have mortise and tenon joints like that, and say on the shoe. So this is drilled in several places and there's stainless steel bolts put in place and then the cement and then that slots into place like that and then that's fixed, but it still allows a tiny bit of movement. Oscar Wilde loved all things Greek and he felt it was the very pinnacle of human civilization, especially the Hellenistic period. So the two sculptures the other side of the path from the main figure, bronzes, the one on the left is a statue of the torso of Dionysus. He was the god of wine and youth and theatre. All those things were of great interest to Wilde. The one on the right is of his wife Constance, who was about 5 or 6 months pregnant at that time, and there was a lot going on in both their lives during this period. And they both have a green patina, which is very representative of Greek sculptures, and so that I was trying to make that connection. The whole process of making bronzes is totally different to carving, which is a reductive process. You start from a big lump of stuff and you chop it away to make it smaller. With modelling, you start from nothing and build it up in little lumps and molecules to get the form. And this was the original clay model, which is now dried out. When I'd finished this, I made a rubber mould of it and then cast it into wax and then sent the wax model up to the foundry in Dublin, and then it was poured with molten bronze in Cast Limited. So they're very two different techniques of making the sculpture, and it's sort of part of the whole thing of the paradox in Oscar's life. So if you look at the hands on the statue, you'll see that Oscar's wearing 3 rings. There's his wedding ring, and there's also 2 Egyptian scarab rings which he wears on both little fingers, and which he actually wore for most of his adult life. And when people asked about them, he always said that, well, the left one is for good luck and the right one is for bad luck, because you can't have good luck without bad luck and you can't have joy without sorrow. And that's quite typical of Oscar, who's often known as the master of the paradox. Beneath the 2 bronze sculptures, there's 2 stone pillars which are covered in quotes from Oscar Wilde's writings and work. What I've done is write to various people associated with the art world in Ireland and ask them for quotes that they find particularly relate to them. Lots of people responded, people like Michael D. Higgins, a poet himself, who is now President of Ireland, and Seamus Heaney, Poet Laureate Prize winner. I was particularly excited to discover a poem which was written out in Oscar Wilde's own handwriting, which had never been published before even. I'll just read it out. It goes, "Pathos leaves the artist unmoved, but beauty, real beauty, can fill his eyes with tears." So although there's been a lot of jade used in making the statue, which with its associations of immortality, I really think that it's Oscar's words which are going to come down through the generations and really make him immortal.